Right, that guitar solo was from a song called How Do You Think It Feels by Lou Reed, which is on this album, which is called Berlin. But it also features on this album, Rock and Roll Animal. Anyone who knows me will know this is my top 3. This is a Tarantino 3. 3 albums of all time. Now, you may have this album and be thinking right now, well, I've got this, and How Do You Think It Feels is not on it. It was remixed and you got 2 extra tracks, Caroline Says and How Do You Think It Feels. But the original version is on Berlin. Berlin is a very, very famous stroke infamous concept album. It was entirely written by Lou Reed. It was masterminded, if you like, by Bob Ezrin. Absolutely stellar cast of musicians, including Steve Hunter, whose birthday is today. Happy birthday to Steve. And Dick Wagner, who, as you know, two of the greatest guitar players ever. It's full of great songs. It really is full of absolutely amazing songs. And when it came out, I had heard that one. I went back to front. I'd heard that and Lou Reed Live, and then I went and got Berlin. And at the time, I remember thinking, there's not as much guitar on this as I would like. Subsequent listens over the years, you realise there's tons. There's loads of guitar on the album, but I just got that completely wrong. Now, as I say, it's a concept album, and I am never good at either A, knowing the lyrics to a song that I'm playing, understanding what the song's about. So, a concept album is like, whew, to me, most times. But this, I believe, Lou fanatics, please stop me if I'm wrong, I think it's about a doomed relationship in Berlin, all manner of pretty horrible, abusive behaviour going on. It's a very drug vibe record, I would say. And it has one song in it called The Kids, which features sobbing and wailing. I've never been able to listen to all the way through. When that comes, I used to lift the needle and vinyl, and now, in the high-tech world of remotes, I always either fast forward it or just stop the CD. You'll call me a wuss, but I find it very, very upsetting. So, back to the album. It's got a lot of songs that were done on the Lou Reed Live show. It's got, Sad Song. It's got Oh Jim, which features the legendary guitar duel between Dick and Steve on Lou Reed Live. It's got Caroline Says, which is also in the remixed Rock and Roll Animal, and it's got How Do You Think It Feels. Now, the versions are very, very different, right? The version on Berlin starts with the bass, and it's more like... There's a slide up to the C note, and the drums appear to be leading the whole thing. The drums are very, very dramatic. Now, what that is, it's a C note coming off the B note, then a slide up to an E. Not a million miles away from Walking the Wild Side, and then right, so that's setting the same for it. On Rock and Roll Animal, it's very much a kick-ass rock and roll band playing it in a kick-ass manner, so it's far more like see the difference? Now, a word about the sound here. I'm using an SG Junior here. And the words of Dan Baird of the Georgia Satellites, who said this in an interview in Guitar Player. Now, Dan Baird was actually at the show in 1973 at the Caribbean Music. He actually saw the show that became Rock and Roll Animal, and then subsequently Lou Reed Live, because unbelievably there was so much material that it was put out as this album, and it did a funny thing. It perhaps alienated some of Lou's fan base, but it was totally embraced by the rock and roll crowd, which is how I came to hear it. And it was enormously successful, which then made the record company think, well, did we use every song from the concert? Is there anything left? Which they then put out what you could uncharitably call the leftovers as Lou Reed Live. And Lou Reed Live's fantastic. You know, if I had to pick the best live tracks from what we now have as 2 albums, it wouldn't be entirely that, and it wouldn't be entirely Lou Reed Live. It'd probably be a composite of the 2. So both albums are well worth getting, great songs, incredible guitar playing, right? So Dan Baird, who was at the show, said he was sitting there and he just said, a Junior and a Marshall, I've got to get that signed. Now we now know that Steve Hunter actually played a Hiwatt amp at the recording of the show. Dick Wagner, I think, played his 100-watt Marshall that he mentions in his autobiography, which is a great book, really well worth reading. But Steve played through a Hiwatt, at which point it gives me the opening to crack a joke. I've cracked before, but you know, it's I don't know if it'll be funny this time. So here's the joke, right? Here's a bend up ahead warning. I was talking to Steve Hunter a few years ago. You should never name drop. Elton John told me that. Right, that's the joke. So I was talking to Steve Hunter a few years ago, and I actually asked him the question. Very, very gracious guy. He had the good grace to answer my sort of fanboy questions. And I said, when you got together with Dick Wagner, you know, in these fabulous bands, Alice Cooper, you know, the Alice Cooper Show and Lou Reed's Rock and Roll Animal, did you make a conscious decision to both play Juniors through a Marshall, or you know, through a Hiwatt, but to both play Les Paul Juniors? And he said, no, it's a complete coincidence. They just so happened to both be playing Juniors. Now, these albums would be sensational if, you know, if it was a Strat and a Les Paul, or a Strat and a V, or you know, whatever it was. But there is something about that sound. And the other factor, I think, is there's heavy phasing. You know, if you've heard the start of Heroin, you hear this. You hear that? You hear that sound where they play through the chords. And of course, later on Heroin, you get. That heavy phasing approach. I absolutely love that. So I'm going to play this SG Junior. I've got a little Boss Katana just behind me that I'm obscuring, and I've got the phase setting on, so it will hum and it will swish, right? So you'll just have to put up with that in the name of authenticity, right? So let's get down to the song. As I say, on Berlin it's far more. I'm going to turn the tone down. Right, but on the live album, on Rock and Roll Animal, it's far more rock and roll. Now, I'll break down the solo on Berlin, because it's actually slightly different to what's played live. So we've got... This is How Do You Think It Feels When You're Sweet and Lonely. That's that bit, right? And then goes to... So from the section of G to C, we now get this D chord, and right. In the studio album, there's a D chord with the third, the F sharp, on the bottom. So it has this lovely that chord, right? So instead of D being, it's got, and there's the third, and they play through it, so. Yeah, right. On the live album, there's a light that goes. Right. On the studio album, it's a little bit more restrained. You get the first time you get this, and the second time there's just a chord. Play through the chord like that, and then we go to a section that's still in D. So we've got. We then get. And you hear. See, it's all, the phase effect is so pronounced, it's almost wahing, you know? And if you can sync your finger vibrato with the phasing, like on Heroin, you will get that effect where, you know, the string will go up and down and the phase effect will go. So the swish, the sweep of the phaser will match your finger vibrato. Right? That to me is quite a big part of the sound. Now it then goes back for the guitar solo to the. The guitar solo goes like this. Hear the swish. That's the whole solo. It's over quite shortly, but it's a lovely choice of notes, and I will now break that down if you're interested, right? So, solo starts off a vocal play, very much like a lot of Steve Lukather stuff, and I say this all the time, the vocal play will nearly all, maybe always works, you know? So instead of, how do you think it, the guitar solo goes, you can see that's how do you think it feels. Do it again. So what we're doing there is we're playing B and C. And then we're looking for an E note and howl in it. Second time we got up to high G that we pushed to an A. So that's the opening phrase. Next line. Right, so this time sounds like it's off a G 5-note scale. And there's a little pause. So far we've got and a little, that's the lead-in. And the next part is the same line played in different places. Right? So what we've got there is the bend A. So we're bending the A note, not quite as high as B, but. And then we play a harmony to that by bending the C note. We let it down to a B. And then the F sharp to G. So we've got and then there's a slight timing, but you would imagine what's coming next is but it's not quite like that. There's like a quarter beat that's held back before you hear this very high C. So it's more like and that's the end of the solo. And this bit is just coming off a C, which is just the so it's those notes C, B and G. So and then we play the B, up to the top note of the guitar, and that's the end of the solo on this one. However, on the studio album, there's something that I would say is very interesting. And what happens in the studio album is right in the background, this note is like pushed out of key. And it's very, very jarring, and it puts the whole thing on edge. So, as I say, it's back in the mix, so we don't want it too loud. But if I can get this right, you hear that? You hear this high note, the D. It's just pushed up right in the back of the mix. And it's not as loud as the solo. Lou's come back in singing, but it's got it. So there you go. That is the guitar solo from How Do You Think It Feels. As I say, if you feel like going out and get a copy of that album, assuming you don't have it, it's great. I'd avoid the kids. But the rest of it is great. And if you get the two live albums, you'll find far more rock and roll versions of those songs. I'll leave you a little anecdote. There's a song on it on Lou Reed Live called Oh Jim, and it's got a kind of very relentless rhythm. It's also got a down-tuned E to D. Now it kills me that on this live album, before racks of guitars and tuners and all the rest of it, on Lou Reed Live and on Rock and Roll Animal, you'll hear at the end of, say, Heroin, you'll hear them actually tune up. On the bounce. Well, that just kills me. And so Oh Jim has got the right, it's the three chords D, G and A, and when they play the A chord, it allows them to go really swampy. So I love that. So that's just a little anecdote from a song from Berlin, but the one we covered there was How Do You Think It Feels, and it's, you know, to me it's a fantastic song. It's an incredible bit of guitar playing. Now if you do get that studio album, one thing that's quite interesting is at the end there's a reprise of that solo. They play the opening line, you know, and then it goes into this just amazing wailing solo, right? And I don't think there's going to be a lot of people really want to learn that, but if you want to know the breakdown of the second solo and How Do You Think It Feels, just hit me up, as all the young kids are saying these days. So thanks for watching.